Good afternoon, everyone. Excellencies, distinguished participants, I'm pleased to open the fourth thematic session of the workshop on promoting and protecting economic, social and cultural rights within the context of addressing inequalities in the recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. I would like to welcome and give the floor to the moderator, Chief of Development and Economic and Social Issues Branch of the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Mr. Todd Howland, who will introduce the panelists and moderate the discussion. Moderator, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excellencies, distinguished guests and colleagues, good afternoon. I'll give the floor to the distinguished representative of Verex Foundation, Ms. Justice Walker.
Justina. It's Justina. Yes, it is. Okay, thank you. So we're talking about investing and spending, but where does that money actually come from? Above all, how do we make sure that it actually goes to those who really need it, who need it the most? Because let's be honest, in many cases, some of the governments are not doing the greatest job. And how do we know that? February is bringing strikes across different sectors in the UK, for example. Teachers, nurses, train drivers are going to be out on the street. And at the same time, the government is looking at amendment of public order bill, which will impact the right to assemble in various ways. In Greece, we saw and are seeing some demonstrations, and protests are increasing because the prices are increasing, but the wages are not. EAPN Poverty Watch in Poland, the report that just came in, states that the extreme poverty in Poland, and this is the data for the year 2021, has slightly decreased, but unfortunately the forecast for the next year is already alarming because people cannot afford the bills. And yesterday we've heard a proposal about implementing global wealth tax of 0.5% on the people whose wealth exceeds $2 million US. But I'm just going to throw a couple of numbers that were not mentioned here, and this will be billionaires and big corporations, which has been mentioned before. Oxfam's report in January states that the billionaires' fortunes are increasing by 2.7 billion a day. Taxing people with 2 million's wealth would raise about 337 billion, but implementing tax up to 5%, which was suggested by Oxfam, on the world's multi-millionaires and billionaires would actually raise 1.7 trillion a year. Now, that would be enough for 2 billion people to be taken out of the poverty. The richest 1%, as the statement from Oxfam, has grabbed nearly 2/3 of all the new wealth created since 2020. And this is almost twice as much money as the bottom 99%. And clearly we are that 99%, the ordinary people that make the sacrifices of daily essentials like food or petrol and are being asked for further sacrifices, while that gap between the poorest and the rich is getting bigger by 2.7 billion a day. So with big corporations like British Petroleum, the profit this year has been 27.7 billion, Shell 32.2. Pfizer's revenue was over 100 billion. Banks reported enormous profits, and therefore why are we not taxing that 1% richest and these biggest corporations? The system that we needs to funnel the money organically from the top of that pyramid all the way to the bottom. Thank you.
Thank you, Justina Walker. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative